A frantic banging on the door jolts Jake from a deep, exhausted sleep. He's slumped over his desk, the glow of his computer screen illuminating lines of code that have blurred into an incomprehensible mess. For hours, he'd been wrestling with a project, a complex software design that was now just a digital brick wall. The banging persists, more urgent this time, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Jake stumbles to the front door, his mind still thick with the fog of unfinished work. He swings it open to find an older man, his face etched with lines of concern, his hair a distinguished silver. "Jake, thank God," the man says, his voice raspy but firm. "You have to hurry. The presentation is in an hour. We need to go now." Confusion washes over Jake. Presentation? What presentation? But the man's urgency is infectious, and before he can fully process it, he's grabbing his coat and following him out into the crisp morning air. The car ride is a blur of fragmented conversation, the older man speaking about deadlines and stakeholders while Jake tries to piece together the gaping holes in his memory. They arrive at a sleek, modern office building, a place Jake recognizes as the corporate headquarters of their most important client. Inside, he's ushered into a state-of-the-art conference room, filled with executives in sharp suits. The older man gives him a reassuring nod and points to a laptop on the large mahogany table. "It's all there," he whispers. "Just open the folder." Jake's heart pounds in his chest. He sits down, his hands trembling slightly as he navigates to a folder labeled Project Chimera Final Presentation. The very software he was breaking his mind over just hours ago. He clicks it open, and his breath catches in his throat. Inside isn't just a presentation deck, but a series of detailed notes, documents, and fully functioning code snippets. The most unnerving part. They are all written in his own distinct, slightly messy handwriting, explaining every single intricate detail, every solution to the problems that had him completely stumped. He feels a wave of vertigo. He doesn't remember writing any of this. Taking a deep, studying breath, Jake begins. The words flow from him as if he's rehearsed them 1,000 times, the notes acting as a perfect script. He explains the architecture, demonstrates the software's unique capabilities, and answers complex technical questions with an ease and confidence that surprises even himself. The executives are captivated, their initial skepticism melting away into visible excitement. When he finishes, the room erupts in applause. The lead investor stands up, a wide grin on his face. "Incredible work, Jake. Truly groundbreaking." The meeting concludes with handshakes and congratulations. They've secured the grant, a staggering £50 million. Later that evening, the victory is celebrated at a high-end bar downtown. The air is thick with the buzz of success. Jake finds himself clinking glasses with his colleagues, the older man who started this surreal day. Standing quietly by his side, he studies the man's face. There's an undeniable familiarity to him, something in the structure of his eyes, the set of his jaw. Jake is certain he's never met him before, yet he feels a strange connection he can't explain. His colleague Jess sidles up to him, her eyes bright with excitement. "Jake, you absolutely knocked that out of the park today. I had no idea you were that far ahead on the project." Jake manages a weak smile, the weight of the day's mystery pressing down on him. He says under his breath, so quietly, "Just so she couldn't possibly hear." "Neither did I." They continued to chat for a few more minutes, dissecting the day's triumphant events. As she talks, Jake's gaze drifts back to the enigmatic old man who is now standing alone near the window. Observing the celebration from a distance, "Jess," Jake interrupts. "Who is that old man over there? The one who's been with us all day." Jess follows his gaze, her brow following in confusion. "Who are you talking about, Jake?" "There's no one there." Jake looks back, and the spot is empty. A cold dread trickles down his spine. He shakes his head, attributing it to the stress and lack of sleep. A few minutes later, Jess excuses herself to mingle. Just as she leaves, the man reappears at Jake's side. "A wonderful result," he says, his voice warm. "I must be on my way now, but I wanted to wish you farewell." Jake, still reeling from the day's events, manages a grateful nod. "Thank you," he says, extending his hand. Dot, thank you for everything. As they shake hands, Jake's eyes are drawn to the old man's forearm. A long, jagged scar runs from the old man's wrist halfway to his elbow. Pale and obviously old, but it looks like it was a nasty wound. The man notices his stare and chuckles. I thought the same thing when it happened, he says with a knowing look. But that was many years ago. He gives Jake's shoulder a final, firm pat and turns, walking out of the bar and disappearing into the night. The rest of the evening passes in a haze. Late that night, Jake decides to walk home, hoping the cold air will clear his head. He's halfway down a quiet side street when he's ambushed. A sharp blow to the back of his head, a struggle, and then darkness. He wakes up to the sterile scent of antiseptic and a steady, rhythmic beeping. Is in a hospital bed, a dull, throbbing pain radiating from his head. He looks down at his arm, which is heavily bandaged. A wave of groggy confusion washes over him as he starts to pull at the wrappings, trying to see the damage underneath. A woman in a smart blazer gently stops his hand. Jake, calm down. You're okay. You're in the hospital. You were robbed on your way home last night, and your arm was cut during the struggle. Jake lies back against the pillows, his mind struggling to catch up. The woman explains that she is Detective Lucy Roberts and is in charge of the investigation. Do you remember anything about your attacker? She asks. Jake shakes his head. I was hit from behind. It all went hazy. After that, Detective Roberts gives him her card, asks him to call if any details come back to him, and then leaves him to rest. He's discharged. Later that day, on the way home, he stops at a pharmacy for fresh bandages. Back in his apartment, the silence feels heavy and oppressive. He decides to change his dressing. As he carefully unwraps the old, blood-stained bandage, he exposes the wound beneath. It's a deep, clean slice. He stares at it, a strange feeling of déjà vu creeping over him. He's seen a wound like this before. And then it hits him, a jolt, like an electric shock. The cut is in the exact same place, the same length, the same angry line as the scar on the old man's arm. A frantic energy seizes him. He rushes over to his workstation by the window and signs in there on the screen as Project Chimera. The code's still open. The same project he remembers being stuck on before he fell asleep. The same project that was miraculously finished for the presentation. He scrolls through it, his eyes widening. It's all there, complete and perfect. But he has absolutely no memory of finishing it. Jake slumps back in his chair, exhaling a single heavy breath. None of this makes sense. As his thoughts swirl, his gaze falls on his reflection in the window, where condensation from the cool night air has formed on the bottom half of the glass, obscuring his mouth and chin. It shows only his eyes and nose, a partial, older-looking image of himself. Something clicks in his mind, a sudden, terrifying connection. He turns back to the computer, his fingers flying across the keyboard. He opens a new browser window and types aging software into the search bar. He clicks the first link. The website is simple, with a prompt. Add a picture you want to age. With a shaking hand, he finds a photo of himself from a holiday last year. He uploads it, types 30 into the box, labeled age by years, and hits enter. A few seconds later, an image materializes on the screen. Jake feels the air leave his lungs, staring back at him as the face of the older man from his impossible day. The man who woke him up, who guided him through the presentation, who had the very same scar now fresh on Jake's own. He suddenly remembers that he never asked the man his name. He never saw anyone else speak to him directly. Every time he'd seen him, he was standing alone, just out of the main flow of conversation. An observer now confronted with the image of himself, aged 30 years. Looking identical to this mysterious benefactor, a single mind-bending question forms in his head. Was he even really there? And if he was, how is that him from 3 decades in the future? And how in the world could that be possibly possible?